Naruto walked down the road with nothing on him but the clothes on his back and a wallet in his pocket that had very little funds in it since he was nearly broke when he began his journey with no set destination. Naruto had been banished from his former village, and while the higher-ups from the village had expected him to break down from such news into a state of depression as well as tears, Naruto didn't see this as a problem at all, but instead he saw it as an opportunity to start anew in a different place. Those who were in the village had always seen him as the QB reborn since his father had sealed the QB within him as a baby. That was right. He knew exactly who his father was, since you had to be an idiot not to see it, since besides the whisker on his face, he was a miniature version of the man himself. Plus he conversed with the bijou himself when he was younger, and he cemented that fact. So why was the son of the most infamous shinobi of his time treated like shit throughout his life? Why, it was because the higher-ups wanted what was his from the get-go, and since it was sealed up, they couldn't get to it without his consent. So they tried to beat the resistance out of him to make him a weak, mindless weapon, and would give up his inheritance without a struggle of any sort. He had looked into it in his spare time to see just how far up the chain did the corruption go, and it was unfortunate for him that it went all the way up to the fire. Daimyo himself, who wanted the fortunes of his parents for himself, since he was a greedy man. And he, like the rest of the village, had thought that he was the weakling that they wanted him to be. But that view of him had changed when he had gone along with the squad assigned the mission to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha. Earlier, Naruto's influence on Sasuke in the aftermath of the Chunin exams, though profound, was powerless to prevent Sasuke from leaving his village and friends to receive training from Orochimaru, since he had become tempted when he saw how powerful he was during the Chunin exams, and plus he was given the curse mark. Sasuke's decision to leave was the result of a chain of events that rekindled his hatred for his brother and desire to avenge his clan. To do so, he must claim a great amount of power, which became the center of his entire life. Humiliated by Itachi's earlier declaration that he was disappointingly weak, and aware of the fact that Naruto might be his superior, Sasuke challenged Naruto to a fight after Naruto returned to Konoha from his mission to bring back Tsunade to become Hokage, since the previous one had died during the Chunin exam invasion.
The two of them engaged in a heated duel on the rooftop of the hospital, where Naruto told Sasuke that he had never considered himself inferior to Sasuke. Kakashi Hatake leapt in to stop the fight just when Naruto and Sasuke were about to use their Rasengan and Chidori, their signature jutsu, on each other, deflecting both their attacks into adjacent water towers. While Sasuke's Chidori made a larger dent on the front of the tower than Naruto's Rasengan, Sasuke was shocked to find that the back of Naruto's water tank had been completely blown out by the power of his Rasengan. Sasuke realized he might have lost the fight and received major injuries if Kakashi hadn't stopped the fight. This only made Sasuke even angrier that Naruto was getting stronger by the day, and could actually be able to defeat him in battle. Ever since the Chunin exams and the fight against Gaara of the Sand, Sasuke had felt that Naruto had been improving immensely. Naruto only wanted recognition from Sasuke, recognition that he really had got stronger and was no longer a burden to the squad. However, Sasuke would never recognize Naruto, because, by doing so, he would also have to admit that he was weaker than him. Despite a lecture from Kakashi about the pointlessness of revenge, which made him hypocritical since he hated Naruto since he blamed him for the death of his sensei, the appearance of Orochimaru's Sound 4, with an offer of greater powers, and yet another humiliating pummeling, tipped Sasuke over the edge. Sasuke went to leave the village that night, but was disrupted by Sakura, who then tried to convince him to not leave Konoha.
During this conversation, a crying and desperate Sakura confessed her love to Sasuke, and begged him not to leave the village, but he rejected her. Once she realized that he was going to leave the village either way, she offered to go with him to help him enact his revenge, which he refused. As a last resort, Sakura threatened to scream and alert the village guards if Sasuke left. And finally, having hit a nerve, Sasuke moved from several feet in front of Sakura to directly behind her in a flash of speed. He sincerely thanked her for everything she had done for him thus far, before knocking her unconscious and laying her on a nearby bench, and then leaving the village. A 5-man squad was gathered by Shikamaru under the orders of Tsunade herself, including himself, Kiba, Naruto, Choji, and Neji. Naruto also recommended Shino, However, Shino was on a special mission with his father at the time, so he was unavailable for use in the mission. Sakura arrived just before they were leaving and explained to them while crying that she failed to stop Sasuke, and asked Naruto, who she believes to be the only one capable of doing so, to do it as a once-in-a-lifetime request. Naruto made her a lifetime promise to her to bring Sasuke back to the village. They easily caught up to the Sound Four, who were escorting Sasuke to Orochimaru in no time. Strategies were not used to defeat the Sound Four. Rather, the team split up instead. The same happened on the part of the Sound Four. They dropped people one by one, and Choji ended up fighting Jirobo by himself. Using 2 of the secret pills of the Akamichi clan, Choji was able to increase his chakra enough to keep from being defeated. In the end, he had to consume the red pepper pill, which increased his chakra 100-fold but left him in an extremely critical condition, usually resulting in death. Taking the pill slimmed down his body, as the excess calories were converted into butterfly wings of chakra. After getting his revenge on Jirobo for eating his last chip, and for calling him fat, Choji put all his chakra and power into his fist, and killed Jirobo for insulting his best friend, Shikamaru.
Next, Neji ended up fighting Kidomaru. Kidomaru had trouble at short range, since Neji's Byakugan and Gentle Fist were too powerful to penetrate through. Kidomaru ended up fighting from long range, but the battle was locked in a stalemate, until Kidomaru discovered a weakness of the Byakugan. It has a blind spot behind Neji's first thoracic vertebrae. Knowing that he would be hit in this area, Neji intentionally allowed Kidomaru hit him with a powerful arrow, to which Kidomaru had affixed a chakra string to ensure accuracy. However, Neji used the chakra string to use his Gentle Fist to damage Kidomaru's internal organs. Neji then caught up with Kidomaru, and used his 8 trigrams to close Kidomaru's chakra points. Kidomaru died shortly afterwards, but Neji was left in a critical state after the fight. Shikamaru was matched up with Tatsuya, while Kiba and Akamaru were with Saken and Uken. Kiba and Akamaru did an amazing tag team on Saken, but Saken split with Uken right before Kiba and Akamaru could land a devastating blow. Saken and Uken activated their cursed seal to level 2, which made them far too powerful for Kiba and Akamaru to cope with. Meanwhile, Shikamaru, despite his entire prowess at forming strategies, simply couldn't kill Tatsuya because of her sheer force. He managed to use his shadow imitation technique on her 3 summons, but she quickly dispelled them both. Then he caught her in his shadow imitation technique, then his shadow neck binding technique, while, at the same time, Akamaru had got injured, with Kiba refusing to leave him. Without Akamaru to do their combination attacks, however, Kiba and Akamaru were forced to retreat, and Shikamaru, for the first time, couldn't come up with any ideas to defeat Tatsuya, and was forced to keep his shadow neck binding technique on her. Finally, Shikamaru and Kiba were ready to accept their deaths. However, before the finishing strikes could be executed, the Sand Ninja arrived to help. Right before Shikamaru and Kiba were about to die, they were aided by Temari and Kankuro respectively, who had been ordered to help the Konoha ninja. Kankuro's puppets were unaffected by Saken and Uken's ability to fuse with cells. When Saken arrived, he attempted to do the same thing he had almost done with Kiba, but Kankuro turned out to be his new puppet, Kurori, to injure Saken, forcing them to fuse back and Uken to take over. Kankuro then trapped Saken and Uken inside his puppet Kurori. Kankuro then used Karasu to stab them through holes in Kurori, and used Karasu and Kurori to do a devastating and deadly combo, Black Secret Technique Machine one-shot, thus killing the brothers. Meanwhile, since Tatsuya used sound to attack, Temari's wind was a natural enemy. Temari used her sickle weasel technique, which blew away Tatsuya and cut her flute in half. Shikamaru used this time to tell Temari about Taiyuen's strategies. After a while, Tatsuya fixed her flute, and was ready to kill Shikamaru and Temari, but Temari used her summoning technique and used the summoning, quick beheading dance, which was able to kill Tatsuya by destroying an entire tract of the forest, in which the sliced debris crushed the latter. Last, Kimimaro, who was stronger than all of the Sound Four combined, came to aid the escort mission. At first, he was faced with Naruto, but even Naruto's massive amounts of shadow clones proved to be no match for Kimimaro, whose taijutsu skills were more than a match for Naruto's superior numbers. Naruto even used the 9-tailed demon fox's chakra, but was still losing. During the fight, Sasuke emerged from the coffin that he had been placed into to be escorted to Orochimaru, which caused Naruto to return to normal and begin wondering why Sasuke was with the Sound Four. Naruto began urging Sasuke to return home with him, stating how everyone was worried about Sasuke. Unfortunately, Sasuke, who had fallen deeper into darkness, responded by cackling madly before fleeing with Naruto calling Sasuke's name. Kimimaro attempted to kill Naruto, but was stopped by Rock Lee, allowing Naruto to chase after Sasuke while Lee fought Kimimaro.
Both Lee and Kimimaro were taijutsu experts, but since Lee had only recently recovered from his surgery, he was not in top shape. Lee drank some sake that he thought was medicine and became intoxicated, and began fighting with the drunken fist style. With this added unpredictability, Lee gained an upper hand against Kimimaro. However, he clearly had no idea what he was doing, who he was fighting, and why he felt so drunk. After a while, Kimimaro was forced to do his dance of the camellia, but Rock Lee then appeared to be virtually invincible and laid a devastating blow to Kimimaro. Seeing that there was no chance of him defeating Lee in his present state, Kimimaro used his cursed seal level 1 and overpowered Lee, manifesting his horrific ability to manipulate his bones at will. Not only this, but Lee began to sober up. Lee would have been killed if Gaara had not arrived in time and used his sand to protect Lee. For obvious reasons, Kimimaro was at a disadvantage, since Gaara was capable of blocking all physical attacks, and Kimimaro could only use physical attacks. However, like the Sound 4, Kimimaro was able to get past Gaara's defense, and defense by sheer force. Kimimaro's bones were so tough that they simply forced their way through Gaara's sand. Even Sand Funeral and other crushing forces couldn't bring down Kimimaro, as he created a film of bone beneath his skin to protect himself. Kimimaro would have defeated and killed Gaara with his last attack, but just before Kimimaro could finish Gaara, his terminal illness ended his life.
Naruto caught up with Sasuke and they began battling. Sasuke's cursed seal of heaven, which had been powered up by a pill given to him by the Sound 4, this was why he was in the coffin in the first place, gave Sasuke inhuman strength, which he used to reduce Naruto to almost ragdoll levels. Meanwhile, Sasuke recalled his experiences with Itachi and his parents up to the point of the Uchiha clan downfall. It was in these memories that the Mangekyo Sharingan, and how Itachi obtained it by killing his best friend, Shisui Uchiha, was revealed. It was also revealed that Itachi had encouraged Sasuke to gain the Mangekyo Sharingan, which he claimed to be the only way he could exact revenge on Itachi, by any means necessary, and this became Sasuke's motivation for killing Naruto, who he claimed to be his best friend. Back in Konoha, Kakashi Hatake, brought up to speed on the situation, and summoned his ninken, including Pakun, to track down Naruto and Sasuke. Meanwhile, Naruto and Sasuke unleashed the Rasengan and Chidori respectively, causing each other to fly backwards. Activating his cursed seal, Sasuke used his enhanced speed and strength to overcome Naruto and strike him with a Chidori. Naruto managed to block the attack, but Sasuke, still intent on killing Naruto, tried to strangle Naruto, only to have himself thrown aside by a Nine-Tails-powered opponent. With his enhanced abilities, Naruto was able to easily overwhelm Sasuke, all the while trying to reason with him, only to have Sasuke ultimately reject his efforts. Despite this, Sasuke finally admitted they were fighting as equals. In this moment, Sasuke's Sharingan finally matured, enabling him to predict Naruto's movements and once again turn the tables. Upset by Naruto's persistence, Sasuke knocked him unconscious with Peregrine Falcon Drop. The Nine Tails, probably to save itself, gave Naruto even more of its chakra, creating, for the first time, Naruto's one-tailed transformation, complete with the demon fox cloak that surrounded him. With one arm of the cloak, Naruto unleashed powerful short and long-range attacks, which Sasuke, even with his Sharingan, was unable to keep up with.
Feeling he had no choice, Sasuke increased his cursed seal of heaven to level 2, once again evening the playing field. Both Sasuke and Naruto realized the cost of their respective abilities at that point, but both decided that they had no other choice. Sasuke revealed that the location of their fight was the Valley of the End, and determined to end the battle, forced the use of a third Chidori. Naruto created, using one hand and the Demon Fox Cloak's chakra as a shell, the Demon Fox Rasengan. Sasuke's Chidori, after a moment, warped into the flapping Chidori. The two ninja collided their attacks. Sasuke, planning to punch Naruto in the heart, deliberately missed and targeted the gut instead. while Naruto, referring to one of Sasuke's insults, scratched his forehead protector. A black dome of energy formed around them, which eventually dissipated, revealing the two ninja as their current forms, and then as their younger selves, who held hands and smiled at each other. When the dust settled, Naruto was revealed to be victorious. It had been a close fight, but what Sasuke had no idea of was the fact that Naruto had been secretly trained by the Kyuubi through the years. Yet he didn't win unscathed since he wasn't invincible in any way, so he took the unconscious body of Sasuke and began the walk back to Konoha.
Once he arrived, he expected some sort of recognition for his accomplishment since he had brought back Sasuke, but instead all he got was more hatred from the people for the damage done to him. Sasuke was admitted to the hospital while Naruto was violently kicked out when he tried to receive medical treatment for the hole in his chest from Sasuke's Chidori. Since he wasn't going to get any sort of treatment from any form of medical staff, he headed to his rundown apartment and fetched the first aid kit he stole a week ago since the store owner charged him a price that was far beyond what a simple med kit should cost. He took a needle and thread and sewed the wound up and allowed Kyuubi to heal it back up from there, and as soon as he was finished there was a knock on his door. He opened it and the shinobi that stood there violently shoved a scroll into his chest before he vanished. Naruto read the note and saw that the council wanted to see him immediately. On the way to the Hokage Tower for the meeting he met Sakura. "Hey there Sakura," Naruto said to his pink-hair teammate as she walked up to him. Slam. Sakura fist contacted with Naruto's skull causing the wounded blonde to fall to the ground. "I should have known better than to trust you to bring Sasuke-kun back in one piece. You're the reason why he left and also the reason why he is in such a state of pain. I wish you had died. You don't deserve to live after what you have done to him. I hope the councils order you to be executed for being what you are, a monster," said Sakura before she stormed off in a huff.
Things got worse when Naruto entered the council chambers. Naruto did not like the councilors. They were mostly civilians who were fat and spent most of their time and money making his life miserable in one way or another. Worst of all was that they were in the villager shinobi elder's pocket. "Uzumaki, Naruto, do you know we have summoned you?" Elder Utatane Koharu asked.
No, Naruto answered truthfully, but if he was being honest he had an idea as to what it was about in the first place. "We are concerned about the display of using the monster's chakra, better known as the Kyuubi's chakra against one Uchiha Sasuke," Elder Mitokata Homura said. "I had no choice in the matter. Sasuke was using Orochimaru's curse seal and it made him look inhuman. Not to mention I got hit by the Chidori twice," Naruto said in protest. He should have foreseen this. He knew that they hated him just for being a Jinchuriki. The village council must have given the elders a lot of money to set this all up. It was the perfect excuse to be rid of him after all this time.
"While that is understandable, Uzumaki Naruto, we have our concerns and quite frankly we are worried. Or more specifically, your use of that foul monster's chakra is what worries us. You even mentioned in your report, you felt like you were losing control of yourself, and summoning to Kyuubi's chakra, which holds nothing but malice, hate, and anger. How do we know that the Kibai is not influencing you?" Koharu said.
"I control my own actions. It's true I feel those things when I use the Kyuubi's chakra but I control my actions," Naruto said in protest. He knew however, it had fallen on deaf ears. "This isn't the first time you've lost control is it?" Homaru asked. "No," Naruto admitted sadly. "Yes, against the terrorist Momochi Zabuza, you lost control against his apprentice, Haku. I believe and you admitted you could have mauled Uchiha Sasuke then." "But I didn't," Naruto shouted. "Hold on, is this about Naruto using the Kyuubi's chakra? Because I've seen the reports on the Chunin exams and Naruto demonstrated the ability to control the Kyuubi's chakra to some degree. That's why he's under apprenticeship with Jiraiya. So Jiraiya can keep an eye on Naruto and have Naruto grow strong enough to control the Kyuubi's chakra," Tsunade said in an angry tone of voice. Naruto smiled since he knew that at least there was one person who he could count on in this village at least. Or at least so it appeared from a third-party perspective. "Can he Tsunade?" Shimura Danzo said for the first time. "There's nothing special about him. He doesn't even have any real talent. He's also proving to be a problem more than a liability. It's true he can draw out the beast's chakra, but he cannot control it effectively. As Hokage, you must think what's best for the village and not your own selfish desires. The question I have is what happens if he loses control in the middle of the village?
Didn't you hear a word I said? Tsunade said. Of course. But can you and Jiraiya truly keep the boy in check? The fire daimyo doesn't think so, and agrees with us that the boy is unstable, Danzo said in a monotone voice. Naruto knew at once where this was going. He didn't like it, but it was true.
Danzo, you bastard, Tsunade growled.
Danzo is not wrong, Tsunade. There is also the matter of Akatsuki. According to Jiraiya, they are made up of 10 S-class criminals. And Orochimaru used to be one of them, and he killed the Sandan Hokage. Uchiha Itachi is one of them. And he nearly got his hands on the Kaibai. We cannot face Orochimaru and Akatsuki. Kumogakure and Iwagakure are mobilizing their shinobi. Things are very tense right now in the world, and the possibility of another war is blooming on the horizon. Konoha must take actions to secure its citizens, Koharu said. You only made this meeting to make it official. You've already made up your minds.
We have, and the boy has not convinced us he can keep the Kyuubi in check. Homaru said. The civilians' council members were all smiling as he said that.
Uzumaki. Naruto, you are no longer a Konoha shinobi. You are banished from our village along with its allies. You will have your chakra sealed and will be expected to leave Konoha within 24 hours, or you will be executed, Danzo said with a sly smile. You can't do that. I'm the Hokage, and I decide who is banished, and who stays. Tsunade barked.
I'm afraid the daimyo of Fire Country has given us executive orders to handle the matter as we see fit and what we believe is in the best interest of Konoha. Uzumaki Naruto is an unstable Jinchuriki who can no longer serve as a Konoha shinobi. Perhaps if he survives Akatsuki, he can become a farmer, Danzo said with a smile.
The Anbu took Naruto away and placed him in a sealing chamber where they put a chakra-suppressing seal on him, and something else that he was unsure of what it was. All he knew about it was that it cut off the mental link he had with the Kyuubi, so they could no longer talk. What was sad about this whole thing was that it was Jiraiya who did the sealing of his person, and he didn't have one shred of guilt on his face as he did it either. Nor did he have any when he had Naruto's name removed from the Toad summoning scroll. Naruto was then forced to go to his apartment to gather what little belongings he had, but before he did, he used the last bit of chakra he could muster to make only a single shadow clone to go see Tsunade to wish her goodbye.
While he was gathering what little he had, the village celebrated his banishment as that meant that the Third's law about him was nullified in its entirety. All of the friend he used to have turned their backs on him as he walked towards the front gate, with the majority of them throwing junk as well as insults his way. While it hurt Naruto inside, but not as much as you would think since he had mentally prepared for this sort of thing happening at some point in his life. As he walked towards the gate, he was stopped by a slap to the face, and the slap came from none other than Hinata herself, who had a look of rage on her face. How dare you, she growled out in malice, to think that at one point of my life I thought that I could love a monster such as you. Just die and do the world a service.
I have known about your feelings for me for quite some time, said Naruto, as he began to slowly walk past her, like she hadn't just slapped him in the face. And I believe that we could have had a future together myself. But now I can only pity any man you may end up with, since you will most likely turn on him just as easily as you did to me. Naruto didn't even look back to see her shocked face, but instead walked out of the village, all the while with a smirk on his face. His shadow clone had dispersed, and it was because of that he was smirking, since he knew the truth on why they did this. Jiraiya, as well as Tsunade, used the seal on his body, which was linked to another one that was placed on all of the seals that only he could open. It was designed to activate upon his death so as to open up everything that was rightfully his, so that they could rob him blind as well as smear his name into the ground as they did it. Tsunade had laughed about it since she had some gambling debts she needed to pay off, and the Senju clan had run dry since she had gambled it all away over the years, away from the village, and it was mainly that hidden fact that she came back to the village in the first place, since she knew that as Hokage, she could lay claim to the fortune of a dead clan, with the permission of the daimyo, who obviously was on board with the thing since he wanted a portion of its money. who obviously was on board with the hell thing since he wanted a portion of it. Now they just had to wait a few days for the seals to dig in deep enough to break free once the trigger happened. What not a single one of them was aware of was that Naruto had known about his inheritance for quite some time. He had used the night that he had stolen the forbidden scroll as a diversion, since he knew that it wasn't a makeup test, and sent a clone to take his place in the forest as he went to clear out both accounts as well as the scrolls within his rightful home. He placed them in a pile of small scrolls that he had hidden away for the longest of times, but he moved it away from the village and placed it somewhere safe. Wave Country. He had given it to Tazuna's family to hold on to without the knowledge of the rest of his squad. He had excused himself to take a quick piss, but in reality he had gathered his scrolls up and brought them along. Once their mission there was over, he had given the scrolls to them for safekeeping. Now, while he may not be able to use jutsu due to the seal on his body, he had denied those who sought to rob him blind of their prize. So now we have caught up to current events in Naruto's life, and it was then that he wondered on where to go since he couldn't go to any allied village without them hunting him down to kill him. It was then that Naruto made a decision that would lead him down the path of greatness, the likes the world had never seen. He decided to go to Wave just long enough to gather his stashed away scrolls, and once there he sat down for dinner and explained why he was there in the first place. He told them everything about his life leading up to that point, which made them upset about the whole situation, to which they offered him a place to stay. But Naruto knew that Konoha would send in to kill him as well as anyone who got in their way if he stayed. While he himself wasn't a seal master of any sort, although the art of which ran through his genetics, he did know a tracking seal when he saw one, so he planned to go to his ancestral home in the ruins of Whirlpool to see if he could learn enough about seals to remove what Jiraiya had put on him. So Tazuna gave him a boat as well as provisions to last him a while, and then Naruto set out on his way towards his destiny. Whirlpool. Naruto arrived at the ruins of his fallen clan and knelt down as he said a silent prayer for them. After he had done so, he sat down for a quick meal and set out to rummage through the ruins for something of use. But alas, no matter how much he looked, there was nothing that was able to help him since all texts were burnt, and the scrolls he did find were messages and not jutsu or seals. It was in that moment that Naruto sat down in a huff as he watched the sun go down. Yet what surprised him was that it went down. He saw a campfire in the distance, which shocked him since there shouldn't be anyone here at all, in these ruins other than him. As he made his way towards the fire, he started to make out a lone figure sitting there on ground with his legs crossed. It was an old man with bulging muscles that looked out of place on an old man such as him. He had a beard that was long and gray along with the rest of the hair on his body. He wore pants as well as an open jacket that allowed Naruto to see scars on his chest, that if looked at as a whole, made the image of the Big Dipper. "Hello there, young man," said the man, as he motioned for the boy to sit by the fire with him. "Please have a seat by the fire. It has been quite some time since I have had the pleasure of company." "Who are you?" asked Naruto as he sat down by the fire to get warm. "The manners of youngsters these days," grumbled the man as he took out a metal spike and skewered meat on it to roast over the fire. "It is common courtesy for the young to introduce themselves to the old before the old introduce themselves to the young." "Oh," said Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Sorry about that. My name is Naruto Uzumaki." "And Uzumaki," said the man as he slowly rotated the meat that was cooking over the fire. "So what brings an Uzumaki like you to the ruins of such a place? I understand the connection to one's ancestral home as much as the next man, but there is nothing here for you, young man." "Then why are you here, old man?" said Naruto as he was slightly pissed that this man had basically said that his quest was pointless. "I am here since I am looking for someone to pass on my skills to take on my martial arts styles that it will not die out alongside me. I have searched for quite some time, but I have found no one who can truly unleash the power that I can, so I am afraid that I will never find a student. Yet, somewhere in my very soul itself, I felt like there was a higher being that was telling me to wait here, and my prayers would be answered. So my boy, what is your story?" said the man as he handed Naruto some of the meat offered to him and began to eat and talk.
Naruto told him his life story leading up to this point of his life as he had explained to Tezuna's family not too long ago, and he spared no details to paint the horrid picture that his life had become ever since he could remember it.
"Well, that is a sad story," said the man as he stood up and wiped the flecks of meat that had fallen on him from eating off of him. "And while I wish to tell you my own story, I am afraid that it must wait for a bit."
"Why is that?" asked Naruto in confusion as the man threw a sand-like powder into the fire, causing the light from it to burn brighter, and reveled that they were surrounded by Konoha hunter nin sent by the leaf to kill him on the orders of the Hokage.
"I do believe that the answer to that question is as clear as the light of day," said the man, as he got into a defensive stance and motioned for Naruto to stay behind him. "And judging from the killing intent they are leaking, talking is not a solution to this particular problem." The man then got into a strange combat stance that left Naruto mesmerized for reasons that he was unsure of. The shinobi attacked the old man, yet he never faltered and instead attacked them in retaliation. What shocked Naruto was the fact that the old man only had to touch his opponent with a single finger before they would begin to bulge in grotesque ways, and then explodes into a bloody mess. The leaf shinobi were unsettled by this after they had seen it done the first few times since he had got about a fourth of them from the start. Yet they quickly attacked again from a distance, this time with shuriken as well as kunai. One even had the proper mind set to throw an exploding kunai at the old man, but he just shrugged it off as he walked towards them with determination in his eyes. The shinobi at this point were stunned from the display of raw power that came from this man and made to retreat. But there would be none of that since the man made clones of himself, each charging energy to their hands, and in a split second, the shinobi that had come to kill the boy were themselves dead. Naruto looked at this man with nothing but admiration in his eyes. "Who are you?" asked Naruto for the second time. "My name is Kenshiro," said the old man with a smirk on his face, "and I have chosen you to be my student." After the nuclear war that had ravaged the planet and the death of his master Ryukin, Kenshiro had left with his fiancée Yuria to find a future for them somewhere in the post-apocalyptic world that they now found themselves in. However, their plans to find a home to start anew was ruined by Shin, a rival from the Naruto X Harem school, who then proceeded to defeat Kenshiro and engrave the trademark 7 scars on his chest that would become a legend amongst those who would come to fear the man who wore those scars, before kidnapping Yuria for himself. Kenshiro survived his ordeal and spent the next year wandering the wasteland for revenge against the man who had taken his fiancée. During this time, he developed the killer instinct needed to survive in the war-torn age and befriended 2 young orphans, Bat and Lin, who followed him on his journey for some time before they themselves found a home to settle down in star families of their own. He discovered that Shin had assumed the title of king and was the leader of the eponymous king organization that he had come up against multiple times in his travels. After defeating Shin's 4 generals in hand-to-hand combat, he infiltrated his capital city, Southern Cross, to settle things once and for all. Driven by his new strength, Kenshiro soundly defeated Shin in their fight, but he was unfortunately too late to rescue Yuria herself. Before his death, Shin revealed to him that Yuria had already committed suicide to stop his violent ambition. Refusing to die from Kenshiro's technique that he had used against him in their fight, Shin leapt to his death from his palace balcony, as Yuria did before him a while ago. The grieving Kenshiro continued to journey the wasteland after his vengeance was complete, never staying at one place for too long, as the curse of Hokuto leaves only chaos in its wake. He made a career of destroying those who preyed on the weak and innocent, such as the Golem, Jackal, and the Fang clan, and built a reputation as a savior among the people. He also discovered that his 3 older brothers and fellow Hokuto Shinken practitioners, Jagi, Toki, and Rao, had all survived the nuclear holocaust and had gone their separate ways to seek their destiny elsewhere. Jagi, the second youngest, had long hated Kenshiro, and was at that point of time committing acts of carnage in his name to ruin his reputation. It was also revealed that Jagi manipulated Shin into taking Yuria in the first place, as well as kidnapped Rai's sister, Eri, and murdered their parents. Kenshiro caught up with Jagi and subjected him to a gruesome death befitting his crimes. Kenshiro then fought against his second oldest brother, Toki, who had succumbed to madness after the apocalypse. But this was in fact an imposter named Amoeba, a jealous rival of Toki's who was impersonating him to do to him as Jagi had tried to do to Kenshiro himself. The real Toki was in fact imprisoned at the prison known as Cassandra by Rao, the eldest brother, who had taken the title Ken-O, King of Fists, and aimed to bring order to the world by any means necessary. With the help of Rai and Mamiya, Kenshiro toppled the great prison and was reunited with Toki. He would go on to become a valuable ally to Kenshiro in his journey, and intervened during his first fight with Rao, as they were on the verge of killing one another, which, if it had happened, would have caused a major power rift, since many people would try to fill in the leadership position. Kenshiro then joined forces with a man named Shu, the leader of a guerrilla outfit who was fighting against Suther, the holy emperor and master of Nanto Hoho-ken, who enslaved children to build his empire. Kenshiro was defeated by Suther in their first fight when his vital point attacks had no effect on Suther's body. On the brink of death, Kenshiro was rescued by Shu's son, Shiva, who gave his life to aid his escape. However, in retaliation, Suther stormed the rebel hideout and had Shu executed at the summit of the Holy Pyramid. Kenshiro recovered from his wounds, and this time he uncovered Suther's secret. His heart was on the opposite side and the position of his vital points were reversed. Kenshiro took pity on Suther's tragic past that he told him while dying, and killed him with a merciful technique, bringing an end to the Holy Emperor's reign. With the final battle with Rao drawing ever closer by the day, the mysterious last Nanto general emerged to challenge Rao's conquest. It turned out that the general's identity was none other than Yuria, Kenshiro's betrothed who he thought had died. In actuality, she had been saved by the Nanto Goshashi after attempting suicide at Shin's palace, and her survival was kept a secret to protect her from Rao. Kenshiro fought Rao using the ultimate Hokuto Shinken technique, Muzu Tensei, drawing on his profound sadness from thinking he had lost the love of his life, to make Rao tremble in fear for the first time in ages and retreat. However, Rao kidnapped Yuria during his escape and prepared to kill the woman he loved since it would imbue him with the same sorrow. Kenshiro and Rao had their final battle at the Hokuto Renkitoza, with Rao having killed Yuria to unlock Musu Tensei as well, so that they could fight on equal terms. Yet Kenshiro's greater understanding of life and death gave him the edge over his older brother and led him to victory over his brother. Yuria awoke after the battle, as Rao had actually put her into a false state of death when he realized she was terminally ill. After Rao's death, Kenshiro spent his next few years living in peace with Yuria, whose disease had been subdued by Rao's power as a final parting gift from his brother. Kenshiro traveled with his fiancée for the few years that they had together in bliss, but while they were happy to be together, they were saddened that Yuria's terminal illness prevented them from having any children. So in time, Kenshiro was forced to bury his beloved, but not before finding a priest that performed the marriage ceremony, so that they were officially man and wife. He buried her on top of a mountain that no one else would dare to climb to ensure that the burial site would never be disturbed. After he had buried her, he knelt down and said a silent prayer for her soul. And as he climbed down the mountain, he let one tear fall from his eye. The tear that fell hit the ground, and in the years that followed would fertilize the ground, so that a single rose would appear on her grave. Kenshiro then continued his endless journey to help those in need. As the years passed and his body aged, he had sought out another to take up the mantle of becoming the Hokuto master. But no matter how far he looked, he had not found the right person to teach it to. He began to travel east for reasons that were beyond him, and by doing so he found something that genuinely surprised him. There was a massive wall that blocked off a section of the world, for reasons he could not understand as to why they would in the first place. So he set out to find the proper materials that would allow him to climb over the wall. It took some time to accomplish his goal, since there was no buildings or salvage anywhere near the wall, so he had to make multiple expeditions to form not only a ladder to climb the wall, but to get back down once on the other side as well. He finally succeeded in creating the ladders he would need, and once he got to the top, he was amazed at what he saw from the top of the wall. Beyond it was a world that was untouched by the nuclear war that had destroyed the rest of the world. So once he got down from the wall, he carefully hid the ladders so that in the worst possible situation, he would be able to return to the other side.
He began his travels in the elemental countries, but to his dismay, no one understood him, so he wandered aimlessly since he was unable to communicate with anyone he found. It was because of his defense of a helpless village against the forces of Iwa that spread his legend as the lone warrior, since no one knew his name. Out of the large group of Iwa shinobi that had attacked the small village, there was but one survivor of that defense. It was a man named Onoki, who would later become the third Tsuchakage. It was because of his fight with Kenshiro that he had back problems for the rest of his life, yet after what he had seen happen to the rest of the shinobi that had attacked alongside him, he knew that he had gotten off light.
For years he traveled the elemental countries and fought anyone who challenged him. And his luck finally changed when he arrived in the village of Whirlpool itself. It was the Uzumaki there that helped him understand the state of the world on this side of the planet by taking the time to teach him their language, as well as the history of their founding that went all the way back to the Sage of the Six Paths. In return for their help, he promised to come back and train one of their own in the future, near the end of his life, so that his style would be able to continue on. The Uzumaki began to see him as family, and he even had some women attempt to seduce him since he was an Adonis in their eyes, and would have happily bared his child. Yet they were shut down after he told them that his heart had only beat for one woman, and she was gone. And while many a woman would just try harder in their pursuit of seducing him, they understood as well as respected him for it. A few years later, after he fully understood the world itself, he set out on his endless journey once more, since it had been his entire life to travel, and he wasn't one to settle down anywhere. Yet before he left the village, the clan head met with him and gave him the only spare key to the vault of the Uzumaki that contained copies of everything that they had made over the years, since it was always good to have the copies protected in the off chance that their village was attacked and burned down along with the knowledge it gained. Little did he know when he left that he would never see the Uzumaki clan again, since the Second Shinobi War had begun, and their deaths would come quickly and unexpectedly. Years later, word came to him that the clan had been wiped out during the war, and it was then that he returned to the ruins of their people. He felt a deep sadness seeing the ruins of the once great clan, since he believed that not only could he have aided them and kept them alive if he had stayed, but now he was unable to fulfill his promise to them since they were all gone. So, with a heavy heart, he decided to settle down within the ruins and spend the rest of his life constantly reminded that he could have stayed and helped. And there he remained with a small glimmer of hope that one day that there would be another Uzumaki to return to their ancestral home so that he could fulfill his promise. And that is my story, said Kenshiro as he sat near the fire explaining his life story to his new student. I remained here since I had believed with a small glimmer of hope that there was still an Uzumaki out there to teach as I promised. So you will teach me how to fight as you did against those shinobi not too long ago? Asked Naruto. Hopefully, since he believed with that type of power and skill, he could help many people as well as get his revenge against his former village. That is true, said the man as threw Naruto a blanket, since it was now time to sleep since they would begin his training in the morning. Naruto took the blanket and wrapped himself with it, and as soon as he did, he felt sleep hit him fast since he was unaware of just how sleepy he really was. Kenshiro looked at his sleeping form, but he frowned as he felt the boy's energy was completely out of whack. He used his enhanced senses to see that all of the boy's energy was being siphoned into the seal that had been placed on him by his old mentor, and that the demon inside him was also adding to it. He could only make an educated guess as to what it would do when Naruto was killed, but he wasn't going to wait on the off case that it exploded from too much energy. He charged energy into his fingertips and punctured Naruto in the chest area with them. Once he did, the energy began to return to where it was supposed to go, like when you draw a wet line on the concrete, and then spill water near it. The water will then follow the line that was drawn. Naruto was forced awake from the sudden, unexpected flow of his chakra returning to him. But then there was a surge of immense pain as the energy that had been stored into the seal for the past week burst through his body. It caused his body to bulge out with muscles, the skin on his body ripping open from the sudden growth. Yet just as quickly as it had been ripped open from the surge of power, it began to heal with the help from the demon within. But then there was another surge of power that then blasted out of his chest in a shot of crimson energy. The energy hit the ground and formed into the QB himself, but instead of the massive-sized demonic creature that had terrorized the Leaf Village years ago, before it was sealed away in Naruto. "How is this possible?" asked the QB as he sensed that Naruto had passed out from the pain. Naruto's body has been drastically altered from what it once was, as instead of the weak, malnourished kid who had just began to gain some muscles that he was now as Kenshiro was, with huge bulging muscles that had ripped his shirt right off his body, but his pants had at least stayed on since they were stretchy. Kyuubi sensed that while he still had his freedom from the seal, a large portion of his power was still in the boy. And it was from that power that his wounds were healing. "I'm not quite sure myself," said Kenshiro as he gave the boy a quick look over to see that everything was still in place. Seeing that Naruto was still alive and well as the quick muscle growth, he smirked since he would be able to train him in a far quicker manner, since the first part of the training would have been to help him build up the muscle mass that he would need to master his style. Now, they could skip the 7 years of intense training that it would have taken to build up his muscles, and skip right to the style itself. But my best guess is when I rearranged the chakra within him back the way it was. The backlash of doing so caused the energy stored in the seal that was siphoning energy from him to break, not only itself but the seal that kept you inside him as well." "Well, how about that?" said the QB as he lay down for the night, since while he felt a fraction of his former power return to him, he was not going to regain the full amount anytime soon. "So what will you do now that you have gained your freedom?" asked Kenshiro as he sat down himself, since he felt no trace of killing intent coming from him, so he had no need to defend himself from the demon. "I will do as I have done for years and stay by the kid's side," said the QB as he curled up into a ball to sleep. "Why not take this chance to leave and live your own life away from the boy, who was basically your mobile jail cell?" "It is because the boy interests me," said QB. "Since I have been with him since his birth, I have looked after him since the beginning. I have seen a boy with so much potential that was being suppressed since those who looked after him were keeping him weak, so as to control him. I protected him mainly since it was more to protect myself, since if he died then I would as well. But I began to grow attached since I saw a boy who had the potential to be great and wanted to do just that. So I aided him where I could. Now that I am free, I wish to see where he will go and what sort of man he will become, since to me, it is a sort of entertainment to see such a thing unfold." "Then this training journey will be fun for you," said Kenshiro as he shut his eyes to sleep for the night. "Indeed it will be," growled QB as he fell asleep. Leaf Village. As Naruto slept from the pain he had endured from having his seal altered internally, the seals that had been set to protect what was rightfully his in the village all shattered at once. Those who had been waiting for this moment celebrated the success of their plan with a few drinks before they set out to retrieve what wasn't theirs to take in the first place. Yet once they went to the bank to gather their ill-gotten gains, their feeling of triumph quickly turned into ones of utter shock as well as rage, since there was not a single cent left in either the Uzumaki nor in the Namikaze vaults. They began to worry about what they might find in the Namikaze estate, and as they arrived, they saw that their fears were well-founded since they searched the whole house over, and yet could not find a single scroll, not one shred of knowledge that they could use. It was then that they realized that all their years of planning had borne no fruit, and it had all been for absolutely nothing. The screams of rage could be heard from everyone in Fire Country shortly after they realized that fact. 7 years later, Naruto stood on the wall that separated the desolate side of the world to the side that he had been born into. He stood 7 feet tall and 5 inches, with bulging muscles that were clearly visible since his clothes matched what his master Kenshiro had worn himself for years. The only variation to the clothes was the fact that his outfit had a hood that covered his head so you could see his hair, which cut short, Hokage Naruto haircut from Boruto, and a bandana that covered up all of his face except for his eyes. He had a pack slung over his shoulder that was filled with the scrolls that he had taken from the Vault of Whirlpool, so as to train in his clan's style as well as the Hokuto. Since while Kenshiro had explained that he would be trained in his style, that every master of it had developed their own style of it, that had increased its power into what it was today. Naruto smirked as he jumped down from the top of the wall towards the ground, yet used his chakra to use the winds to soften the blow so as to not break his legs from doing so. Once he did so, he heard a soft thud beside him as Kyuubi landed there. While over the 7 years' worth of training which Kenshiro brought him towards the worst part of the world, to help him toughen up against the worst possible things that life could possibly throw at him, and he took to all that he taught him like a sponge. Plus, since his chakra was once more flowing through his body, he was able to use shadow clones to master the techniques taught to him in a fraction of the time it took Kenshiro himself. Kenshiro grew proud that he learned so fast, and it was soon after his training was complete that Kenshiro died. But before he did, he asked Naruto only one favor as he handed him a crudely made map. "Bury me next to my wife." Those were his final words before he passed on. And like he had asked, he carried his body up the mountain that Kenshiro himself had climbed years ago and buried him next to his wife. He said a silent prayer as Kenshiro once did himself, and used a seal to encase the rose in a glass bubble, so that it would survive for many years. Once he had done so, he set back out towards the elemental nations, so as to begin his own journey of revenge. He made it back, but had to deal with quite a few gangs of bandits as well along the way, to which he killed using the techniques that his master had spent years training him in. He had learned to work alongside his partner Kyuubi in a way that would make the Inuzuka clan jealous, since they were in perfect sync. Then again, the Biju had spent years sealed within him, so he knew how the boy thought and moved accordingly. He had grown to the size of a miniature horse, but was able to shrink down to a size that was invisible to the naked eye, which helped him since he could sneak attack anyone who tried to hurt his friend. He could also siphon energy from Naruto himself to grow to his maximum size, but could only do so for a few minutes at the most. The two of them made the trip to Whirlpool, where they entered the vault once more like he did 7 years ago. He took the time to carefully place the scrolls back where he found them in the first place since, while there may not be any other Uzumaki to claim them, at the moment he did plan to have children in the future to continue his bloodline, so he would keep these scrolls in pristine condition to pass down to his kids in the future. And now that everything was where it was meant to go, he set out on the first destination that he wanted to set out for in his journey for revenge. Wave Country. Leaf Village. "What do you mean the spring daimyo refused the marriage proposal?" yelled a very pissed-off Tsunade. Standing in front of her desk was Jiraiya with a serious expression on his face as well. "It's just as I said. She ripped up the scroll that had the proposal on it in front of me when I arrived," he told her. He usually isn't one to get serious about things, but the loss of all their alliances as well as their trading rights in the last 7 years was an exception for that type of mentality. Damn it. The marriage proposal between her and Sasuke was vital to the village's survival. "We need allies for the war that is coming," she growled while biting her thumbnail. She turned to Jiraiya and asked, "Do you have any idea on who else to turn to here? We need either allies or resources to sell so we could hire people to aid us." "Sorry, but I've got nothing," said Jiraiya sadly. "But after we had Naruto killed, there is no one willing to help us. Not even Taki is willing to help us since it would be essentially suicide for them to side with us in the upcoming war with Iwa and Kumo. We'll have to send out scouts in the area to see if they can track any movement from the enemy's forces," said Tsunade with a sigh while she takes a seat in her chair. She straightens out and gets serious. "Having the brat killed was by far the worst plan we had in quite some time. If only he was still alive to this day, I could get my hands on that brat. and wring his neck for all this while beating out the location of the funds he stole from us years ago, she thought with obvious disdain. You may be right about that, but at least my spy network spans all over the elemental nations, so we will at least know when the enemy is making a move against us. Sinead rolled her eyes at Jiraiya's obvious bragging. These past 7 years had been hard on the entire village, since when word got out about Naruto's banishment, the people he had helped outside of the village were outraged by such a thing. But that outrage only intensified 100-fold once they heard the rumors on Naruto being killed on the orders of the Hokage, and since no one could find him anywhere, they assumed that the rumors were true. And now that all allies they had as well as any trading agreement they had in the past were all gone, their enemies saw this as the perfect moment to strike at them, and both Kumo and Iwa joined forces to kill them once and for all, while plundering their village as they did. Sinead sighs and waves her hand in a non-caring manner. Just find out anything that you can that will aid us in some way. Speaking of which, how is Sasuke's training with the Toads going? She asked, knowing that he had let Sasuke sign his name in the Toad's contract as a sign of good faith by telling him that it would help him gain the power to kill his brother in the future. But there was an added secret to the offer, since it was also an easy way to bring back the best if he tried to run off again, since Jiraiya could then just reverse summon him. It's going at a slow pace. I and Pa have started his more advanced techniques training as well as his senjutsu training, but it's taking a lot of effort for him to master it. I can't even remember the amount of times that Pa had to stop him before he almost turned into a statue. Everyone's pitching in to help, but, she asked while narrowing her eyes at her fellow Sannin. Jiraiya awkwardly chuckled, while he also scratched the back of his head in an obvious show of nervousness. The Elder Toad doesn't seem too keen on us training the kid in the first place. He's even babbling about some new prophecy that he never seems to shut up about. It's all he's willing to talk about these days, and it is truly starting to get annoying. What did he say about this new prophecy? Asked the Slug Sannin with interest. Well, if you want it in full word for word, he said that the man with the power to bring stability to chaos itself will perish, and yet his power will go to another. That the one who is gifted such power will himself become even stronger than his master ever was, told Jiraiya with a shrug. He really wasn't too worried about what the Elder Toad said, since he was getting on in years and is most likely going senile in his old age. Sinead, on the other hand, felt a sense of dread, but she wasn't quite sure why she was feeling such a thing all of a sudden. Like Jiraiya, she didn't believe in superstitious warnings given by a 500-year-old toad, but something about it feels off to her in some way. Putting the prophecy to the back of her head for later thoughts, she goes back to talking about the current issue. When the daimyo hears about the proposal falling through, we will have serious problems on our hands, she said while interlocking her fingers together, and took a serious-looking expression. I knew I should have somehow sweetened the deal so the bitch would bite. So what happens now? If he cuts our budget, we won't last very long. And the other villages are already not afraid to use our moment of weakness to their advantage, said Jiraiya with a look of worry. There's only one answer that can help us with our problems, Sinead said with a smirk. Oh. And what brilliant plan are you thinking? Asked Jiraiya, listening with interest on how she's going to help the village get back up to its former status as the strongest village out of the 5. We invade Wave Country. And here I thought you actually had a good plan, sighed Jiraiya in disappointment. Wave Country is pretty much the embodiment of trade routes nowadays. If we take over the country, we will be the ones in control of the trading among the world. It won't just improve our economy but raise morale as well. Plus, once taken over, we could finally change the name of the bridge to erase the memory of the brat once and for all, she explained with a smirk. Well, that's good. And all, but what about the other villages and countries? Won't they retaliate if one of the neutral countries, which you have just stated yourself as being the main center of trade in the elemental countries, is suddenly invaded by us? Jiraiya asked with a hint of nervousness in his tone. He can't be blamed, since so many countries and villages against their own isn't something that he believes Leaf can handle, even during their strongest years. Tsunade scowled at his response. Let them try and retaliate. By the time they get word of it, we will already have control over Wave, as well as leverage, with all the civilians. They won't try with the chance we kill them. Fine, I'll head out to check up with my spy network and make sure that everything is ready by the time you get the needed forces for this plan of yours, he said as he walked towards the window to jump out of. And maybe get some research done before heading out, he thought to himself with a perverted giggle before jumping out of the office. After he left the room, Tsunade took out an empty scroll from the drawer in her table and wrote down a few teams that she will need to send to attack Wave. She won't need too many since Wave only has a dozen or two of hired samurai who shouldn't be much trouble for a few squads of Chunin and Jonin. Wave. 1 week later. What is the world coming to nowadays? An awesome bridge like that, and they name it after the demon brat. Spat out a leaf Chunin as he looks over the large bridge they are guarding. Along with him are 3 more Chunin whose sole duty was to make sure nobody gets in or out of the village without a higher-up's permission. I know what you mean. I can't wait till they finally call it the Great Uchiha Bridge. It has a better ring to it, remarked a second Chunin. I disagree, said a cold voice behind the 2 distracted Chunin. Standing behind them is a large figure who was wearing an open jacket that showed off his abs, which made the female of the group slightly blush since she had to admit that he was very well built. The other 2 Chunin noticed the man's sudden arrival and jumped back to get distance on him. The other 2 Chunin aren't so lucky when they find their torsos detached from their lower body after the strange man poked them in the chest. They bled out while screaming in pain since they had felt their bodies rip quite laterally in half across the torso. The remaining Chunin pulled out kunai to fight the stranger, but both look nervous since he did just kill 2 of their comrades in a second in a manner that was overly gruesome. In their minds, they are trying to think of ways on how he got so close to them without them seeing or sensing him coming in the first place. The leaf has truly gotten lazy since I left it. What a pity! It'll make killing you less of a challenge, spoke the strange man as he brought his full attention to the 2 remaining Chunin. He lifted his hands in a combat stance that they were unfamiliar with, so they didn't know what to expect. So they charged him together in an attempt to kill him with their teamwork, but all the strange man did was flick the woman in the head while he shoved the man back hard. Kumiko, make a run back to the village and call for reinforcements. I'll hold him off while you're gone, ordered the male of the Chunin. Are you sure you can handle him? He seems pretty strong, she said with uncertainty, but the male glares back at her in annoyance.
Just go. I got this, he said, determined. She nods and makes a dash down the bridge towards the under-siege village of Wave to warn them of the strange man.
You're already dead, said the man as he watched Kumiko stop mid-step as her body began to bulge out in a bubbling manner. She then violently exploded, the sheer horror of the male Chunin who was still alive. Kumiko! Shouted the other Chunin. Arrogance. You believed that I would simply let her go that easily. You're definitely a leaf nin, all right, chuckled the stranger before he quickly rushed forward, faster than the male Chunin can follow with his eyes. The male Chunin felt his hand bend against his will and grabbed his own throat before it began to tighten around it. Please have mercy, said the man in a barely audible voice. I don't know why you are begging me for mercy when it is you who is killing yourself, said the stranger, as he continued to walk towards the village. He heard the snap as the man's neck broke and continued onwards to become the hero the town needed for the second time in his life. And as he walked towards his destination, he couldn't help but smirk since this was going to be so very one-sided. In the town center stood a large podium with 6 hanging ropes and loops there that had been recently knotted to hang their intended victims. They were currently hung around the necks of 6 of the town's civilians, with 3 of them being Tsunami, Inari and Tazuna themselves. The reason for this is because they are the largest supporters for Naruto, as well as the biggest haters to the Leaf, since his death was made known to the world, so they are being made an example of to show the others that they will have to fall in line, or else they would suffer the same fate. Standing around the raised podium are the other civilians in the town who can do nothing other than just watch as the 6 are going to be hanged in front of them. Some tried to stop them from killing them, but the leaf nin surrounding the podium are holding everyone back from trying to interfere with the execution. Two of the shinobi there just so happened to be the duo, Izumo and Kotetsu, the infamous Konoha guards.
Monsters. You're all fucking monsters.
Why are you doing this to them? Don't kill them, please! People of Wave, these criminals have been convicted of keeping S-class details from the leaf. Therefore they shall be sentenced to death as so ordered by our Hokage, declared a jonin, on top of the podium. Liars! You scum invade our country and expect us to believe that bull.
Leaf can burn in hell for all we care. Killers, traitors, scum.
Silence, roared the jonin who used his killing intent to silence the crowd. The execution will now commence. He nods to the executioner who nods back, and grabs the lever to release the floors underneath the 6 people chosen to be executed.
Stop, let my son go, he has nothing to do with this. Cried and begged Tsunami while Tazuna glared and cursed at the leaf nin, and all the while Inari sobs away in fear of his unavoidable death.
Before the executioner can go through with pulling the lever, a loud bang fills the air. Silence envelops the town as nobody makes a move. And after what feels like hours, but is actually seconds, the executioner collapses onto his side with a hole in his chest. Then all hell broke loose.
Wave citizens all dispersed with shouts and screams of terror while the leaf nin tense up for a fight since they figured one was coming.
What was that? Shouted a chunin whose head jerks back from a sudden projectile that struck him in the head with enough force to break his neck, courtesy of a strange hooded man who was calmly walking towards them as he tossed a few rocks up and down in his hand. The leaf nin either widened their eyes or gasped when they saw the man stand there who had somehow managed to throw a small rock with enough force to not only break a man's neck but to penetrate through a man's chest through sheer power alone. A gust of wind causes the jonin on the podium to cross his arms across his face. The wind stops, and when he was able to see as well as the others with him, he saw that the strange man was gone, but he felt something sinking into the back of his neck. Die, whispered the stranger before he channeled chakra through his fingers. Die, whispered the stranger before he channeled chakra through his fingers that he had sunk into the man's neck, and watch as his head exploded out the front of his face. Taking the corpse, he threw it towards the other shinobi, as both an open challenge to try and kill him, as well as a clear example of what would happen if they tried. He then used his hands to easily slice the ropes, so that the victims wouldn't die. Thank you, stranger, said Tazuna, as he rubbed his throat once he got the rope off of it. It was no problem at all, Tazuna, said the stranger as he ripped the rope off of Inari's neck. How do you know my name? Is it so strange for a friend to know your name? Said the stranger before he pulled his hood off to show them his face. Big bro? Muttered Inari when he recognizes the blonde hair even though it had been cut short, and the whisker marks on his hero's face. Wow, look at you, Inari. You're not a runt anymore, said Naruto with a smirk, as he rubbed the top of the teen's head in a fatherly fashion. Tsunami and Tazuna both looked at him in surprise, since they didn't expect him to come to their rescue yet again, since they, along with the rest of the world, had been told that he had died 7 years ago. They were even more surprised by his threatening appearance, yet Tsunami blushed heavily as she looked him over, and saw the bulging muscles that he had on him. She couldn't help but have a brief fantasy about him, but in the end she shook it out of her head. Now go. I don't want anyone hurt from the fighting, he told them while pointing towards the direction of their home. We will talk more about this when I am done here. The family, of course, didn't really feel exactly safe, as he said that since there was still quite a few leaf shinobi surrounding him. And they began to wonder if Naruto would be able to defend against all of them. But they decided to trust him and quickly left the area to allow Naruto to fight the invaders without distraction. Naruto saw 2 chunin running behind them to get to the group, but he quickly put a stop to that as he appeared between them in a burst of speed, surprising the chunin. One of them finds Naruto's whole arm in his stomach, while the other one can only take a step back before Naruto punches him hard in the gut. Naruto then whipped the dead chunin off his arm and quickly punched the other one multiple times all over his body before he kicked him toward a group of shinobi. Before the body even hit the ground, it exploded into bloody chunks, with his bones becoming short-range shrapnel that hit multiple shinobi in various places. None of the damage done by the sharp bits of bones was life-threatening, but they were painful since they did puncture the skin. The Leaf Nin looked at this man with a look of both shock and horror as they saw their comrade just explode in front of them. "Wait a second, isn't that Naruto?" asked Izumo, who recognized the whisker marks on the blonde. This shocked all who heard this, since the demon brat was supposed to be dead for the past 7 years, so they all began to wonder how the hell was he still alive? And where had he been to gain such muscles and power? Jonin notices this as well, and grins since it was a golden opportunity to aid their village for the coming war. "Change of plans! Capture the Kimbai, and bring him back to Leaf. Lady Hokage will grant us a large reward if we return to the village with the demon." Smirking, Naruto walked towards the group as he began to slowly crack his knuckles as he did so. Every crack they heard made them begin to feel unsettled as he did it, and he silently reveled in the fact that they were unnerved by him simply cracking his knuckles. "Give up, demon," said one of the Chunin that remained as he brandished his sword in preparation for the fight they would have. "Look around you! There is 40 of us and only one of you, boy. You have no chance of victory here." Naruto then began to laugh as he stood there, and doubled over as the laughter got harder to the point that a tear fell from his eye. "And what exactly did you find funny about that?" "It's just funny to me that you suck so hard at math," said Naruto, as he wiped the tear from his eye and calmed himself down from laughing so hard. "And what the fuck is that supposed to mean?" "You said that there are 40 of you," said Naruto as he folded his arms in front of him. "Yet I only count 20 of you." As soon as he said that, the 20 shinobi that had gotten hit by the bone shrapnel exploded into multiple bloody chunks. Naruto had learned that since he was able to use chakra, which Kenshiro was unable to, he was able to use his Hokuto techniques to overpower and corrupt his enemy's chakra system to force them to violently explode like they just did. Earth style. Earth spikes jutsu. Spikes of rock rise up from the out of the ground and hit Naruto square in the chest. The shinobi smiled as they see this, since they thought that they had won so easily. Yet their smiles quickly faded as they saw that the attack hadn't hurt him, and instead broke off at the tip with Naruto standing there looking unimpressed. He quickly then charged forward towards the person who had used the attack on him and grabbed his arms. He quickly pulled them down hard, to the point that those around him heard the snapping of bone. He then swiped his hand across his neck in a hard, sudden motion that broke his neck that made his body fall forward, to which Naruto kicked off his head and grabbed it before it got too far. He then spun around and threw it hard to the point that it impaled another shinobi directly in the chest. He fell over dead, the entire time feeling the head moving inside him. One of the main lessons that Kenshiro told him during his training was to be the most unpredictable that you possibly could, to use shock and awe to horrify your opponent, so that they will make mistakes and be far easier to decimate. "Retreat, fall back to the village," ordered the last living Jonin, who ran towards the bridge, along with most of the other Chunin. "What about the demon?" asked another Chunin who runs alongside the Jonin. "We'll have to bring reinforcements from Leaf, but at least we now know where he has been hiding for all these years." As they reached to the end of the bridge that connected Wave Country to Fire Country, they noticed a large shadow that was hiding in the fog. And to their utter horror, the QB himself came out of the fog and roared at them in rage. And before they could even put up any form of defense, that in the end would ultimately fail since not a single one of them was capable of blocking the power behind his attack, he blew out a stream of fire that roasted them alive, where they stood and burned them down to nothing but ash, which then blew into the wind.
Back in town, 5 Chunin were still fighting against Naruto himself, unaware to the fact that they were the last of the Leaf Nin in the entire country. They all looked tired and sore except for Naruto, who was grinning away at them with not a single scratch on him, and from looks alone you could tell that he was winded in the slightest. In his left hand is a heart that he caught from the current Chunin that he had killed, since once he exploded Naruto caught the heart in his hand, which he then crushed with his hand while looking at the shinobi who were still there, who actually thought that they could take him out by themselves.
They were all proven wrong in the worst possible way. How the hell is the demon brat this strong? Wasn't he supposed to be weak? exclaimed a Chunin with a scar going down his face.
Everyone feels a shudder go up their spines when Naruto smirks, which shows them that he is just playing with them and hasn't taken this fight seriously since the very beginning. Along with his bulging muscles as well as his intimidating aura, it just further proved to them that he was the Kyuubi in human form.
Anyone can change after 7 years? I just changed for the better while you and the rest of that rotten village have gotten weak, chuckled Naruto. I was free to learn more than your village would allow me to, since then I would be too powerful to control. And they were right to fear my power, since look at what I have been able to do in such a short time. Your forces are dead, and I still stand no matter what you throw at me. Izumo and Kotetsu grit their teeth in frustration, since it's obvious to them that Naruto is a lot stronger than any of them, and the both of them are beginning to think of making a run back to the village, since it was becoming more apparent that they would not win here. Before they could order a full retreat, a Chunin to their left starts to quickly fly through hand seals. Earth style, mudslide jutsu. The floor liquefies and heads towards Naruto as a wave of mud. A second Chunin goes through her own hand signs and shoots a bolt of lightning at the wave, making it a lot more dangerous, and the third Chunin runs around the wave to attack the blonde if the two jutsus fail. The large wave of lightning-enhanced mud threatens to swallow Naruto whole, if it wasn't for him lifting his hand up over himself, and bringing it down in a simple karate chopping motion. The wave splits apart and flows past him and through it all. He doesn't even blink as it happens. But how? Stuttered a Chunin in fear while he takes a few steps back from Naruto in fear. How? I was trained by a man who taught me how to do things that many would deem impossible. What I just did was proof of that, Naruto answered. His ears twitched, and without even looking, he moved to the right to dodge the downward sword slash and grab the back of the man's head. He then began to squeeze his head to the point that his eyes exploded out his head. He then slammed the body into the ground, smashing the head into paste as he did so. "Screw this! I'm out!" yelled a Chunin who turned to make a run for it. "Coward, don't run, we can win this!" shouted the only remaining kunoichi of the invasion forces. Izumo and Kotetsu glance at each other and wonder if they should follow the man's lead. Honestly, I think he made the smart move. Sadly, the results won't be any different than if he had stayed and fought. Naruto's enhanced eyes could clearly see through the forestry, and he watched as the Chunin lost his head after running straight into the Kyuubi, who was waiting on the outskirts of town, in wait for this very situation, and bit his head clean off. Water style. Starch syrup binding. Rope, yelled Izumo, who spits out a high-viscosity water rope. Kotetsu summoned his edge blade and runs at Naruto in hopes to skewer him with it. The other Chunin holds two kunai in a reverse grip and follows Kotetsu's example by charging as well. The water rope wraps around Naruto's left arm and tightens its grip. Izumo smirked as it did, because all he has to do is pull the rope and the demon will lose his arm from his action. However, his plan changes when Naruto conducts lightning chakra into his arm, which connects to the rope of water and conducts off of it. While he was trained for years on how to use the Hokuto, he was still able to use chakra in such a way to manipulate the elements. Before Izumo can cancel the jutsu, the lightning reached him and shocks him with a current of a high voltage of electricity, causing him to scream in pain as it happened. He fell to the floor in pain, unable to move due to the lightning messing up his nervous system. Kotetsu swings his sword at Naruto, but Naruto counters by grabbing it with his bare hand and breaking the blade with pure strength alone into various sized pieces. The other Chunin charges, but Naruto sees her, so he kicks Kotetsu away and swipes at the kunoichi with his hand. She quickly replaces herself with a log, which finds itself cut in half from the chop. Before she can try the same technique for a second time, Naruto throws one piece of the chopped log, the sharpest one of the two sides, at her and impales her through the chest and through a tree. She clawed at the log impaled in her chest in vain as she slowly bled out from it. Cracking his neck and his knuckles as he stood there, Naruto grins at the two remaining Chunin, one still on the floor. "Come on, I've got all day and literally thousands of ways to kill you. We can't win. We can't fight this demon," thought Kotetsu, who is finally starting to fear for his life after seeing the entire invasion force die by Naruto's hands. He puts a hand into his weapons pouch and grabs what he needs from within it. He pulls out 3 smoke bombs and throws them at the floor. A large cloud of smoke erupts and covers Kotetsu and Izumo, yet Naruto just finds it just annoying since even though he can't see them with the naked eye, he was still able to sense them clear as day. He pulsed his chakra, which blows away the smoke to show that both Kotetsu and Izumo were gone. But he already could sense that before he pulsed his chakra in the first place. "The hunt's on," said Naruto as he smirked and stretched his legs. He took his time as he did so since he was not really in any sort of hurry here. Once he stretched his legs fully, he got into a runner's position and then charged in the direction he sensed that they had gone with enough power and speed to crack the ground below him. 3 miles away from where Naruto had just been, Kotetsu was jumping from tree to tree with his friend on his shoulder. "Damn, I never thought the brat would get so strong," said Kotetsu. Izumo couldn't reply since he was still feeling the paralyzing effects of Naruto's lightning attack. But he nods his head to show his agreement but winces at the struggle of doing so, since his nerves were on fire. They land on another tree branch, only for it to fall when the tree that it was attached to was punched over, which made the branch that they were aiming for no longer available. Thinking fast, Kotetsu jumps off of it and throws a kunai with wire wrapped around the end of it. The kunai sticks into another branch, and he swings to the floor while still holding Izumo. Both land to their feet, although Izumo does it with difficulty since his feet were still shot. "Hello boys, miss me?" asked Naruto in a mocking tone, with a big grin on his face, as well as he stood there with his arms crossed in front of him. "How the hell did you catch up to us? We had a head start on you," said Kotetsu with wide eyes. "You're talking to the guy who got away from Ambu when he was 10, deadpanned the blonde. So catching up to the two of you was no real challenge." "Fucking brat! Why didn't you just die like everyone believed you did 7 years ago?" This time Naruto loses all traces of humor and instead releases his chakra in an intimidating way. Izumo and Kotetsu are blown back when a pillar of blood-red chakra erupts and pierces the sky above. Nearby trees are blown from the force and even the wind seems to be trying to get away from the foul chakra. Izumo's body was unable to handle the strain of having so much pressure on him at once and died from it. Kotetsu was not so lucky since Naruto had quickly charged forward and stabbed him in the brain with a single finger laced with his chakra. "You are the only survivor of this invasion," said Naruto as Kotetsu stood there in a brain-dead sort of fashion. "So I want you to leave here and walk back towards that corrupt place you call home. Once you return there, I want you to give Tsunade a message for me." He then leaned in and whispered the message that he wanted him to relay to her. Once he had said what he wanted to say, he pulled his finger out of Kotetsu's head and watched as the now brain-dead shinobi began to slowly walk towards the leap. He guessed that at the rate he was going that it would take a week and a half at least to return and deliver the message he wanted him to. Naruto then made a shadow clone that he had head towards Tazuna's house, while he headed away from Wave Country since he needed to be elsewhere at the moment. But he made a mental note to return since there was someone who he wanted to see again here and he was sure she would be glad to see him again as well. Leaf Village, a week and a half later. "Is there any news from our forces in Wave Country?" Tsunade asked her assistant, Shizune, who shakes her head as a negative. "No word as of yet. Could there have been a chance that they've been defeated?" Tsunade just shakes her head. "No, that's impossible. Wave Country only has a few samurai at best. The force I sent should have been enough to capture the country. I'm just wondering why I haven't gotten a message from them yet," remarked Tsunade in confusion. "They haven't called in because they're all dead." Tsunade and Shizune look over to the open window to see Jiraiya sitting on it with a serious face. "Dead? How could they have died? I gave them a simple mission to capture a small weak country, and they still failed," yelled Tsunade in disbelief. Jiraiya sighs to himself, knowing that what he's going to say next will most likely tip her over the edge. But she needs to know this since it was important to know. It wasn't Wave who killed them. From what I was able to find out from reliable sources, it was a single man that had killed them. Both master and apprentice stared at the Toad Sannin with wide eyes and actually have to study him for any deceit since what they heard was just too unbelievable to process. You can't be serious, said Tsunade, but Jiraiya grimly nods his head in confirmation. Sadly, I am. My spy in Wave told me about how the village had been under our control, but then a single man came out of nowhere and decimated our forces single-handedly. He left no survivors and did a god job at making sure of that. However, what gets me worried is the description of the man himself, he said, getting a raised eyebrow from Tsunade. Wait a minute, our forces were wiped out by a single man, and we just tried to conquer a neutral country, the doing of which meant the difference of surviving or dying in this upcoming war, and that's what you're worried about? Asked Tsunade while trying her best to keep her rage in. News had probably spread to the other villages about Leaf's attempt on Wave, and they're all most likely preparing to retaliate even more now than ever. You'd be interested if you knew that the one who did this is not from Wave Country. Tsunade and her assistant lose their train of thought after hearing that piece of information. A human with that type of power is just wandering the elemental countries. That's not a happy thought. He must be a mercenary if what I am being told is true, and we need to find this man so he could help us in this upcoming war, thought Tsunade. Did you get a description of the man? Asked the Slug Sannin with a hint of hope. If she can find whoever that person is and capture him either through force or paying him the proper fee, it would make things so much easier. Hell, they might even be able to tempt this man to start a clan with that type of power here in their village. Sorry, but I didn't get a description, but I do know that they're male. My spy was in a rush to send me the message since the writing was squiggly at best. My contact has gotten silent since then, so he's either lying low or he was killed off, finished Tsunade, who folds her fingers together and leans her chin on them. Lady Tsunade, you must bring this up to the council. They must know of the development of the attack force as well as this man who is out there with the power to decimate our forces so easily, said Shizine. As much as she wants to say no, Tsunade can't deny the fact that the council needs to know. This sort of thing is too big for her to simply brush under the rug. You do know that they'll want to send off more people to Wave in order to retake it, told Jiraiya, knowing full well what the elders will want to do. We won't try anything as of now. We've lost enough ninja so far, and I don't want to see any more casualties so soon, since we will need everyone that we can get to survive this war. While we may not have the numbers for defense alone against 2 villages, we still have some of the brightest strategists in the world, so we can still survive if we plan this out just right. You should also know that Iron Country's samurai have been hired to guard Wave Country, with Mifune himself leading them. And why are they doing that? Asked Tsunade in shock. They are usually neutral in these conflicts. So why are they there? Mostly because we tried to invade a neutral country, so they have taken upon themselves to protect a neutral country like themselves. Lady Tsunade! Shouted a shinobi that had stormed into the room. What is it? Said Tsunade angrily, since he had just stormed into her office unannounced. Kotetsu is back in the village, and is in need of immediate medical aid. What? Shouted Tsunade as she stood up. We need to get him to the hospital immediately. They all left the office in a rush since Kotetsu could tell them who the man was that had killed off their forces. They arrived on the scene shortly afterwards, and what they saw horrified them. Kotetsu was there on the ground, crawling towards the Hawkage Tower, but once she was in his sights, he turned towards her instead and began to crawl toward her. During the long, slow walk back towards the village, he had lost an arm as well as a leg to wolves, yet even though he lost so much blood from it, his body continued to move forward since those were his orders from Naruto. Kotetsu, asked Tsunade as she used medical chakra into her hands and used them to heal what she could at the moment to prep him for the surgery that he would definitely need. What happened to you? Kotetsu gargled something that was incomprehensible, so Tsunade leaned in more to see if she could make out what he said. He repeated what he had gargled the first time, and once he was done saying it, his head exploded, covering her whole upper body with blood and brain matter. Tsunade stood up, and from the look of shock on her face, those around her didn't know if it was from what was said to her, or the fact that she was just next to a head that had literally exploded in her face. Tsunade, asked Shizune with concern, are you okay? What did he say to you? He told me, stuttered Tsunade, that Naruto is still alive. The silence that followed lasted for quite a bit after she had said that. Iwo. Naruto had walked to Iwa to handle a problem before it got out of hand later on in the future. He had walked there from Wave Country at a fast yet steady rate since he was in a hurry, but not that great of one. As he appeared close to the front gates that led into the village, he was stopped by several Iwa shinobi that were on guard. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he saw this, since for most of his shinobi career he had always been told that Iwa was the type of village that preferred quantity over quality. And the fact that they had so many shinobi on guard duty at the front gate only solidified that. But then again, they were setting up for war, so maybe he was just overthinking it. "You there," said a jonin with an eye patch over his left eye. "State your business here." "I am here to speak to the Tsuchikage," said Naruto, "and if you do not go and get him within the next few seconds, I will go through you to meet him." "You dare threaten us," said another jonin. "Do you have any idea of who we are?" "So I take that as a no on the fetching of your cage. Am I right to assume this?" "You're damn right that we won't fetch him." Naruto just sighed as he stood there for a brief second before he appeared behind them, still looking at the large doors that were closed, that prevented him from entering. The several shinobi then flew backwards themselves and all hit the doors with enough force to not only knock them unconscious, but to blast the doors off their hinges as well. Naruto was about to take a step into the village when he stopped mid-step. He smiled as the shadow clone had puffed out, and the memories of what it had done came to him. He quickly made another one, who then used the Hiraishin to teleport back towards Wave. While the real Naruto had gone to do what needed to be done at Iwa, the clone had gone back into town and began to clean up the mess that he had made when he fought the Leaf Shinobi. He burned the corpses and destroyed the podium that was to be used as an execution ground, since it was not needed anymore, nor would it ever, since the people here were peaceful. He stopped a spy of Jiraiya's from giving a complete report of what had happened here, and saw that the message had said that a strange man had killed off their forces by himself, but didn't have a clue as to his identity. He knew that this would help spread panic to the Leaf, so he sent it through the proper channels with Kyuubi's help by having the message secretly delivered to another of Jiraiya's spies, who would then give it to Jiraiya himself. Once everything was cleared out, the people of the village had decided to come out and celebrate the return of their hero who had saved them for a second time. And all the while Naruto couldn't help but notice Tsunami's quick lustful gazes, as well as hear her whispering, "If only I was younger." Naruto told the people that even though he stopped the invasion force this time, that unless they get a proper group to defend them, that Konoha would just send more out to attack, and try to do what the first invasion force failed to do. So Tazuna had a friend of his send word to Maifune in Iron Country to call in a favor that he owned Tazuna, since they were old drinking buddies, to aid them long enough to not be attacked again, until the war between the three villages was over. Mifune came within the next few days, along with a large group of samurai, to protect the people. All the while the people celebrated the entire week away. Within the week, Naruto had met with a drunken Tsunami, since she was celebrating with her father by drinking with him, since it was a special occasion. She had gone up to him and just grabbed his head and kissed him, but then suddenly stopped and cried, since she claimed that she loved him. But the differences in their ages would make it impossible for them, since they wouldn't be able to escape the judgment of other people. Naruto told her that he had a way to reverse her age, to which she jumped in joy about, but he warned her it would be quite painful to do. She basically demanded that he do it anyway, to which he just assumed that it was the booze making her act this way, but the conviction was real enough. So he poked all her pressure points at once, which caused her body to stiffen in pain. He then grabbed her head and channeled chakra through her system. Doing so caused her body's age to regress, until she had the body she had when she was 21. Once the process was done, she leapt on him and basically mouth-raped him with her tongue. Tazuna and Inari covered their eyes and looked away from this, since neither one of them wanted to see her like this, since for Inari that was his mother, and no child should ever see their mother act like that. Tazuna was conflicted about it, since that was his daughter, and like most fathers he was concerned about her well-being. But here was the man who had saved them not once but twice in his life, so having such a son-in-law appealed to him. So he jokingly told them that they should get hitched, to which Naruto surprised him by saying he would if she wanted to. She of course wanted to, but she was warned that as the last of his clan that he would most likely have multiple women in his life, to which she just kissed him more, and told him that as long as he loved her, that it would be okay, and Inari wasn't against it since he would now have a father figure again in his life. So once the news of the proposal became known to the people, there was even more celebration than before. The two of them were married by Mifune himself, and the people all came together to build them a home of their own, which with their combined effort only took 3 days, even though they built a house twice as big as any of the others in town. Once the house was built, the two of them entered it, and Naruto placed sound suppression. Seals all over since what they had planned would get loud.
Walking into the village of Iwa and away from the front gate that had been blasted open, a large metal construct protecting the hidden stone village, Naruto was stopped by 2 more gate guards.
"Halt!" one called out, frowning as he took in Naruto's hair and eyes. "State your name and purpose in this village." "Namikaze. Naruto here to see the Chuchikage," he answered, using a name they would definitely recognize since it belonged to their sworn enemy. "And Namikaze, as in Namikaze Minato, the yellow flash?" one guard asked, paling to a shade, normally reserved for a certain snake sannin that hid away in rice country.